Wow, what an introduction. Now, when we had Massive Attack before, I was thinking this is kind of going low, it's the last session of the day, but now we've broken the record for the highest decibels. So well done, everybody. We've achieved something here today. We are here today to talk about the impact of AI on B2B marketing. I don't know if anyone's noticed there has been an impact of AI onto B2B marketing. Specifically, we're going to look at the buyer journey and how that's changing, and then think about how that is adjusting the way that we practice marketing in the B2B space. Obviously, there have been significant changes. I work for an organization called Demand AI. We've only been around for a year, and I would say even in the past 6 months, the changes have been extraordinary. It's big, but what we really want to do is make it real, because I think we've all heard enough theory. We want to talk about some practical tips and advice. This is me. Hi, I'm Matt. I've got an awesome panel of experts here who've got great things to say, so I'm going to make sure we get through this as quickly as possible to get to them. I am going to take the liberty of doing a short presentation to set the scene before we get to our panel of experts, and then hopefully we've got time at the end to take questions from the floor. So, look, I think we can all agree it is no longer a question of if or even when the AI transformation is happening in marketing. Buyers are self-directing and using AI in their research. Marketers are using AI within their practice, and specifically in content creation, which is very close to my heart. If AI is not removing toil from the process, then something is wrong with the process. We'll start by looking at the buyer journey. Let's dig into that. Now, you can get various figures for the size of the buying team, and I would say, anecdotally, my figure will be bigger than the 13 that's quoted here, but that's what the independent research says. Also around the length of the purchasing process. But let's agree that you've got to influence a lot of people over a decent length of time, at least 6 months, before you're going to successfully market most B2B solutions. That means to a greater or lesser degree that you as a marketer need to always be on and always there for those individual buyers. We often say to our customers, you are everything that you put on the internet. Buyers don't want to be sold to. They don't want human interaction. I understand that. So much of the buyer journey is now about self-discovery. Buyers want to research their own solutions and engage with sales teams only when they are well along the line towards a sale. And they're doing that research using AI tools. AI is now the default interface in a way that Google search once was. And it's not a passive information gathering exercise. Buyers want AI to be an active participant to help them through and refine and move through the journey. I was just talking to one of the panelists about how buyers are starting with maybe 3 brands in mind, and then they're refining further from there. So how do we work our marketing practice in that world? That's what's changed on the buyer side. What is changing in our marketing practice? So AI can cleanse and enhance data so that targeting is more efficient. Our promise at Demand AI is that we'll use AI to make sure that every bit of outreach we do is going to a real, relevant, breathing human. You may think that's a very small claim, and it is, but those buyers may not be receptive to the message, but AI means our data is matched to insight and means they will get the message. I'm a content creator by trade. I was a journalist for 25 years. And while content absolutely needs to be based on human insight and be overseen by humans, AI is a massive reducer of toil. It adds efficiency to content production. If you're not using AI in your content production, you are missing a trick. One part of that is curation, personalization. AI means that you can identify buyer need at a much higher level of granularity and version content to map to that need. At Demand AI, we also have the user generate their own insights from source material. That's what's happening within answer engines. Hyper-personalisation at scale is now absolutely possible. It's not just a phrase. And on the automation front, I would argue that machine learning made automation possible anyway, but AI brings intelligence to automation. It's prompting you on which task to do for the most ROI and then doing the task. So AI is not so much about getting the thing done, it's about telling you when to do the thing. Similarly, intent data becomes significantly more nuanced and sophisticated to the extent that some of the existing intent data engine solutions look a little crude now. Again, when we look at engagement with buyers on our own platform, we can tell our customers when their prospect is engaging with content, what prompts they're using to suggest what they should be in market to buy. All of that means that not only are things more effective and efficient, but you're able to measure every piece of the puzzle in order to understand real return on investment, which means marketing should become a constantly learning virtuous cycle, always on, always improving, always delivering value. Should. Easy for me to say. There we go. So if that's what could and should happen, the key question is how to market effectively in this world. AI should be used to inform, implement, and accelerate marketing strategies that are inspired by humans. Ideation, insightful creation, and strategy are human endeavors. Relationships need to be managed by humans. AI should not be allowed to check its own work. And above all else, governance is a human concern. When personalizing, close is not good enough. It has to be right, and that is a human judgment. But if AI can do it well, it should do it. And there are plenty of things that AI does better than humans, as I think you can see from this slide. And before we do get to the panel, there's just one other point that I think is critical, and again comes from our learnings as an organisation that's 1 year old. Because AI can and will do all of these things and more, governance is not being given the consideration that it should. AI is an amplifier. It accelerates everything, which means that if you set off in the wrong direction, even by 1 degree, you're going to go wrong fast and far. Investment in the core to build from strength is critical. And that means infrastructure. And above all else, that means robust governance. It's an enabler of growth, and it is absolutely necessary. So with that, I'm now going to move to our wonderful panel. There we go. 3 practitioners, real experience and actionable insight. I'm delighted to be joined by my colleague Stephen, who is SVP of Sales for Demand AI. And we have Ben and we have Felipe, and they are experts in every part of the marketing funnel that we're talking about. So I'm going to start with a bit of a level set question. And I'm going to go to the whole panel with this. So we'll start here with you, Felipe. Again, we want to talk about real things now, right? There's too much theory talked about when it speaks to AI. So where are you actually seeing AI make a real difference in B2B marketing right now? And supplementary question, where is it falling short?
Thank you. That's a very good question, actually.
Thanks.
Thank you, Matt. In practice, personally, where I see a massive difference is on behavioral and data analysis. It just improves productivity quite significantly. Mm-hmm. Stuff that would take you hours, even days, to analyze and understand in more detail. It's narrow it down. Obviously, you still have to have that level of, as you were saying, human governance and that domain intelligence. That's important. But it's quite significant because it allows us to build models, say, for instance, from a data analyst perspective, and even the behavioral aspect of things. A lot of organizations that have AI bots that, in one way or another, capture exactly what the demand is asking, essentially what your customers are saying, how do they want to interact with your brand or your service or your product. So all these kind of data points allows us to understand how to best structure our strategies in order to reach out to them properly.
So you've got greater intelligence right from the beginning, exactly. From that firm basis from which to build your strategy. And that is the perfect use case for AI, actually, because, again, a human couldn't do it.
Exactly.
Where's it falling short?
I think more than falling short, there's still levels of improvement, specifically in the paid media aspect of things. You have, say, for instance, certain, I'd say, tools and AI-driven kind of like targeting aspects, say, on LinkedIn, on programmatic, that kind of fall short a little bit for B2B specifically. Mm-hmm. I think they have been launched with B2C in mind, and they are quite broad, which means more manual kind of work from a human perspective to control it and make sure that it actually works well.
Sure.
I would see these as a triage, really, framework where you have AI, human intelligence, and domain intelligence. Without one of those, then everything falls apart.
So AI is getting you that firm base from which to begin, and it's also kind of winnowing out some of the tasks to allow you to get there more quickly, but you still need a human to...
Absolutely, and the domain intelligence as well is important to add context.
So Ben, you're coming at this from a strategic perspective, right? Same question, where is AI making a difference, and where is it falling short?
I think the biggest difference that we've seen is around discoverability. So I think increasingly now, and your data showed it, the buying journey has fundamentally shifted. So the beginning or the starting point for any new product or any kind of buying decision journey now begins with ChatGPT or Claude or Copilot or the given platform that the users decided to subscribe to, or perhaps has been subscribed to by the enterprise. So you've got to think about what it means in that environment. We hear a lot of talk around answer engine optimization, so building content for prompts, building content that can help to inform the types of decision-making process that's taking place in that environment. But also, it's increasingly thought of as like a closed door. How do you influence what goes on there? How do you see what's happening in that environment? And that's become both a brand challenge, but it's also become increasingly a B2B buying challenge. We've had clients concerned about the role of the website. What will happen to our website in 2 to 3 years' time? Are we moving into a zero-click environment, to coin Google's term? Or are we moving to a place where people come to the website and validate, but their discovery and AI journey takes place alongside it? So we've been looking at a lot of the data and a lot of the research to understand what's happening there. But I think the biggest shift we've seen is really around that early stage, top of funnel discoverability.
But your website is probably fueling that discoverability as well as being a validator at the end.
To some extent, and I think you've got to rethink, your content. You've got to rethink the way in which you've structured your content in this environment. We've seen companies that are now moving towards having a version of their website that's purely for AI agents and for the AI platforms of the day, alongside websites that are for humans. That's the era we're in now, which is very, very interesting. But it's also, I think it goes beyond that. It's about how you position your content in the right way towards the buyer.
So again, our own platform that we work with our customers on, we have our own version of it to generate leads for our organization. And I created the content for that as opposed to our website. And it is like just a mega in-depth version of our website that nobody would ever go to. But again, it fuels the small language model.
That's it.
Okay, Stephen, bring it home. It's tricky to follow these two answers.
It absolutely is. But I have to echo, what both of you guys have said. I think from my side of the fence, where it's working is in data enrichment, right? So what Demand AI are very good at is creating additional data that has really solid, actionable points that go with that. So I think that one of the, the beauty of that is that we can do so much more with that data. I think one of the challenges that we have is how can we refine that and process that at scale so that we can really get the most out of it.
Yeah. Okay, I'm going to let you off the hook now because I'm going to ask these guys about content. So when it comes to content creation at scale, how do you ensure AI output maintains quality and brand voice without becoming generic? This is definitely a question for you, Ben. So,
Yeah, I mean, I'm a former journalist as well, and I think that it's really important to maintain human editorial control of everything you do. I think people have become really attuned to spotting when content has been even structured using AI, and I think we're fast moving the era now where it's just about removing M dashes and taking the structure and removing the question ordering of things.
I was trained to use M dashes. It really
I know. I feel that the death of the M dash is something that I really lament. But I think the bigger challenge is making sure that you've got human editorial control, because high quality content, thought leadership, that is still what wins it in today's environment. And I think that's also what people crave, a differentiated, opinionated point of view. They don't want to hear something generic. They've seen it a million times. It's all over LinkedIn, just constant regurgitation of what comes from ChatGPT. So I think it's really important to have, the human editorial control across everything. And ideally written and structured as well as possible by people who know how to write. So I think increasingly there is this desire to get back to that sort of format and not rely too heavily on AI.
No, I tend to agree. I mean, my own experience over the past 6 months has changed actually in that I've never thought that there wasn't a case to be made for everything has to start from a human insight. I think AI can reduce toil and effort in the production of things, but it has to start from something that's creative and unique from a brand voice perspective, and has to have that oversight. But I also think two things, and I realise I'm going to come to you after this, Felipe, so if I say anything you were going to say, that's important, but I was saying two things. One is put the user, give the user the control that they can decide how they want to consume it. So AI is an enabler to extract insights. You can still write the perfect piece of content, but they can extract the insights. But also versioning, curation, personalization. You can take that unique thing and make it uniquely useful for each persona. Felipe, what's your experience?
No, I completely agree with you both. I think that the role of publishers as well in bringing some human-led sort of research into content creation is still quite important in validating and just not necessarily creating the same kind of content, basically. I think it's quite important to have that level of human control and, as I said, like the domain intelligence, which is super important in understanding how you want to show up for your brand, for your audience, really.
Yeah, for sure. And then there's the discoverability side of it, right? Like we've seen data suggesting that 9 in 10 B2B buyers now use generative AI in their research. Who is that 1 in 10 who isn't doing that would be my question to that. Ben, this is definitely a question for you. Like, how has that changed how you think about content strategy and discoverability, right? When you're talking to your clients, like, how are they going to be one of those 2 to 3 brands that are thought of from the beginning?
I think they're trying to understand what the behaviors are of what people are doing in that environment. And there's some really good research that's been published by Sixth Sense that talks about that recently. And they found that people are structuring RFPs in that environment.
Yeah.
So they're using AI, they're using these platforms to basically help to facilitate their job, to make decisions, but also to actually support the sort of the business structured answer. So if you can get to the point where you're helping them with that level of structure, I think that puts you in a very advantageous place. It's not just about appearing on shortlists. It's not just about having objection handling or the right answers in the right environment. I think it goes beyond that. And we're now getting into a period where people want to be able to build things. And I think that's where Anthropic and Claude has got a real advantage, because if anyone here has tried using Claude to build a presentation or build something that has an application or has some value, it's fantastic for that, and that really differentiates it from the other platforms of the day. So I think companies are using it to do those things, and I think they are structuring their content and they're structuring the discoverability in that way, which is help me to build a brief, help me to build a presentation, help me to build an RFP that I can take to market to get the thing that I need to do done.
Yeah. As a side note, this presentation was built in Claude.
There you go.
It was an A4 long prompt, like with a lot of research that got into it. But yeah, Felipe, discoverability.
I think discoverability, generally speaking, gives opportunities for new platforms and new tactics in order to go to market and to be visible, really. If you think about most people's and the behaviors of research, specifically using LLMs, you have a very selective kind of trusted source for LLMs, and if everything is going to be exactly the same, you're going to get the same crap, right? That's what I meant in terms of having third-party kind of validation in terms of like the way that you structure your content and understand exactly how you want to position yourself. Just generally speaking, I think is important to not let that AI lead the whole strategy in itself, but more so guide it as to where you want to head.
Yeah, for sure. And again, it comes back to you are everything you put on the internet, so make sure what you put out there be insightful. I would also argue only put out things that are insightful and useful, and like avoid the temptation, which is like massive amounts of volume just because you can. Stephen, I'm going to come to you because I'm about to say the phrase hyper-personalisation at scale, which I know is one of your favourite phrases. It's a phrase everyone uses, but what does it actually look like in practice, and what's the minimum data infrastructure you need?
I think what we've seen over recent years is hyper-personalisation really is just a name on an email. But I think that what we understand at Demand AI is that it goes much deeper than that, right? So we need to understand the buyer journey to do many things effectively, primarily use intent data, decide which channels are going to be the most effective, which copy material or creative is going to resonate the most within that audience at that time. And then that final point is timing of execution is critical. So we know here that good data plus AI, great. That's going to get you to the right place faster. Bad data plus AI, it's just going to get you to the wrong answer quicker.
Yeah, no, absolutely. If you, like I said before, if you set off in the wrong direction, you'll get there quicker. But actually, that's more damaging. all of these things together, I'm going to ask the ROI question, because we're talking a lot about things that we can do. We're not asking the Jurassic Park question, which is, should we do them? So how are, I'll start with you guys first. How are your clients and organizations measuring the return on investment of AI? And are there any meaningful are the metrics that are more meaningful than others, that move the needle? Felipe, let's start with you.
Yeah, I think the measurement comes down to commercial value. If you can't really measure it, then there's not necessarily an ROI to go against, right? And that really requires the proper architecture to be able to measure any sort of initiative within AI. I think, generally speaking, the whole aspect of measurement is quite important for validating how you put yourself out there. And specifically, if we were to look at, say, personalization in some aspect, and looking at how the buying committee has grown extensively over the past 5 years, is how do you influence a whole account, a lot of people beyond just that sort of decision maker, right? And so, when you're doing content at scale, is investing a lot on personalizing those journeys. How does that all come together into moving the needle specifically? And that comes down to sort of platform and specific metrics, but equally from a good hygiene of your CRM and a good sort of feedback loop between your marketing and sales teams, in order to be able to provide that journey properly and understand where does the money go and how is it actually returning it, commercially speaking.
Yeah, sure. Yeah. It's a very complex question, so it requires kind of a complex answer. But to your point, sometimes it is about looking at those platform level metrics that will tell you like levels of engagement and so on. Ben, thoughts?
Yeah, I think the metrics that people have gravitated around for measuring a return on investment for AI have typically been efficiency, productivity, and speed.
Yeah.
And if you can get a combination of those three things in what you're trying to do in any given workflow or process that equates to a high quality output, then there's a chance of success.
Yeah.
The problem is, I think, that a lot of organizations have tried to replace existing structures, possibly even existing resource. I think about Klarna, who, they were probably one of the first early adopters to bringing AI workflows and processes into their customer service team.
Yeah.
They got rid of about 100 people who were doing customer services very, very well, and it led to a really bad outcome. Their customers hated it, and as a consequence, it took a big bite out of their share price, resulting in billions lost. And as a consequence of that, the ROI would have been horrendously negative on having put that and implemented that. The CEO had to come out and make apologies, and they had to hire people back to bring that function back in again. And I think that is a really telling story, and we'll see more of that, I think, as time goes on. Because if you're not measuring and if you're not putting it in the right places and in the right workflows, then you'll see a pretty horrific outcome. So I definitely think it needs to come back to the 3 points around efficiency, productivity, and speed, but it has to be applied in exactly the right areas for that to make a difference.
Yeah, and that speaks to like at what level you're measuring KPIs, right? You're a strategic agency, which means you're talking to your customers and helping them really enhance the outcomes, right? We have customers who are really interested in KPIs, and it's like, cool, if what you want is pipeline, we can do that quicker and faster, but maybe it's not better, right? At the end of the day, I think being focused on value and outcomes is absolutely critical. Okay, we're about to go towards the end of the session, so I'm just going to ask our final kind of panel question so we can get to Q&A with the audience here. I'm going to ask all of you this. For a B2B marketing leader in the audience today who hasn't yet committed to an AI strategy, what's the one thing they should do in the next 30 days? Stephen, shall I come to you with that one first?
Work with us.
Okay, sorry about that. I should have come to you last. Definitely do that, by the way. Ben?
I mean, there's a classic sales answer, so I'll give you a classic strategy answer. Set some objectives that are measurable and that you can review over a short to medium time frame.
Felipe?
Yeah, I can't agree more with that. We move away from can AI do it to should AI do it, can I error? And it's important to ask your questions, the question, so what?
Yeah.
Right? Like, why do you want to do it? It's not about following a trend, it's setting a trend. It's understanding where the commercial value is going to come from that initiative.
I completely agree. I would put a slight nuance on it, which is do that, do the strategic thing, but also do the tactical thing, right? Like to Ben's point, if you can, whilst maintaining the value, do it quicker and more efficiently, also do that, right? Because that will buy you time as well, and it will get you confidence within the organisation. With that, do we have any questions from the floor?
Here first and then back here.
Okay.
Hello, Nikki from MarketBridge. Great conversation, thanks guys. A lot of chat around discoverability and content strategy and kind of what you need to think about to be showing up in AI search, I suppose. We know AI search relies on citation network, not just your own content and kind of third party. Just wanted some perspective on that outside of your own content and what your website is doing. What about kind of citation network and kind of third party within that?
Yeah. I mean, my first answer, which is a very easy answer to that, because I'm the content creator, right? And I'm not necessarily that concerned with measurement, but is, as we were saying before, it's like understand who you are, understand what it is you need to say to that customer, and then say it a lot on as many platforms as you can, and citation will follow. But again, that's a content creator's answer. It's too easy. Guys, what have you got to share?
Yeah, I mean, there's a technical answer to that question, which goes down the path of GEO, AEO, reviewing citations, reviewing all of the environments that the platforms of the day pull from to get their answers. But I think there's also a very clear content-led piece, which is make sure the content and the approach you're taking is as clear as possible, and also does objection handling. And we've seen that objection handling of Q&A, so answering commonly asked questions by your customers, working really, really well. And it's often the most overlooked piece in any form of B2B marketing. Questions always appear at the last, at the bottom of the page. So I think reviewing that and going back to that and understanding that is I think, a key starting point that we consider.
You know, your point about RFPs earlier triggered something in me, because many years ago when I worked at IDG, I tried to persuade the organisation to launch a website of RFP templates, right? And nobody would go for it because it's boring. But actually, to your point, it's like, what is the information people are looking for? Often in B2B, it's pricing as well, which nobody likes to publish. But you know what? If you're able to figure out a way of getting that information out there, that will resonate in answer engines. It's quite tactical, right? But it is about what is the information people want to know, objection handling, like what are people going to be asking? Yep. Any other thoughts?
Yeah, on that point, to be honest, as part of the discoverability journey, there is outdated sources that LLMs will actually draw from. Yeah. So you need to make sure that whatever is out there is up to date from a product stand, even to the point of pricing. I've had customers before say, before they said that they discovered it with an old kind of pricing.
That's why we don't like to publish pricing,
exactly.
Right? But it is interesting because if you're brave enough to put the information out there, specifications, like all of those good.
And it could be an old document as well, right?
Yeah. We had another question, I believe.
Yeah, hello. I really love Felipe's point about domain expertise and its importance. And I wonder what the panel think about how we might protect that or enable people to continue to acquire domain expertise as we become reliant on the tools.
I think, generally speaking, that domain expertise comes from your experience and the way that you hold that information. AI knows as much as you tell it. Right, we're not at a stage where they are consistently present on every conversation that we have. That's what is going to make AI not take over our roles. Really, is how we use it on our ways of working in a way. Just if I understand your question right, is how do we continue expanding it? And to be honest, that really comes with a relationship of you owning your business or with the clients or anything like that. That always is going to be your forte. I'm married with a human intelligence aspect of it, so AI can complete that triage.
I would also add, I think there's a cultural and a technical approach that we should all be taking, right? Which is, again, AI should be removing toil for sure, right? It should be doing tasks that can be done, don't need to be done by a human. But at the same time, culturally, what is our overall goal, right? What are we trying to achieve? We talk about this all the time. Customer will come to us all the time and say, I want X number of leads. And we say, why? Like, what are you actually trying to achieve? Because if we're focused on the values of what we're trying to achieve, it doesn't matter if we're using AI to not cut corners, but to drive efficiency. Like, we will be going in the right direction. And then that domain expertise will continue to grow because we're thinking about, as a marketer, what is my customer, what do they need? What's the problem that needs to be solved? How can we solve it for them? Rather than how can we sell more of our own product, which will lead us down the wrong line, I think, ultimately.
That's a great place to wrap up. Please give a big round of applause to the panel.